Hello, my name is Jeff Lazell, and I'm the Technical Sales Manager for X-Rite Color Management. And today, I hope to teach you everything there is to know about the X-Rite ColorChecker Passport and show you what a powerful tool it can be for getting accurate color quickly and easily every time you shoot.
Before we begin discussing the X-Rite ColorChecker Passport, two important notes. The first one pertains to your capture. So for everything I'm going to talk about today, to be fully effective, a raw capture is essential. The reason there is, when you set your camera to capture in JPEG rather than RAW, you're giving it permission to throw out all the information it thinks you don't need or will ever need. So later on, when we begin to process our files, a lot of the color information that we want to work with just isn't there because it was thrown out in the quest for compression. Next, a properly calibrated monitor is also essential. Whenever you begin to discuss color in any visual workflow, whether it be photography, videography, or graphic design, a properly calibrated monitor is essential. Because you really cannot begin to assess the color in a file if you don't know whether the color you're seeing is the color contained in the file or a color that you're seeing as a result of an incorrect monitor setup. Now, if this is something that you don't know anything about or if you need a refresher on, we're going to be running webinars every day this week after this one on this very subject. So, just what is the X-Rite ColorChecker Passport? Very simply put, this is a set of calibration cards for you to include in test shots while you're photographing, not unlike a photographer's gray card. In fact, it does include a gray card. So, this gray card is included in the set of tools with the intent of allowing you to set custom white balances on the fly when you're photographing.
So, the process for setting a custom in-camera white balance is going to differ from manufacturer to manufacturer and from camera to camera. But in general, the process is as follows. Hold the gray card up in the light you're looking to calibrate for and take a photo filling the frame. Then, go to the shooting menu in the back of your camera and find the heading for white balance and look for custom. Then your camera is going to find all the applicable files on your memory card and use that to set the custom white balance.
Again, this is going to differ depending on camera or manufacturer, so the easiest way to find out how to do this is to, of course, check your owner's manual or a quick Googling. Now on to the more colorful cards included in the ColorChecker Passport. So the way you use these two cards is, like I talked about before, in test shots while photographing. So, the idea is you take one test shot, including these two cards, for every lighting situation you encounter while shooting.
So, if you were, for instance, looking to photograph me in here, for the first shot, have me hold up the color checker. Then, continue shooting as you normally would. Then, throughout the course of the shoot, if we change location, say go outside, or for whatever reason you change camera bodies, have me hold up the color checker again. One shot for each lighting condition.
Then, later on, when you begin to process your raw files, the true power of these two cards will become clear. Just what do you do with these cards now that you've taken the test shots? So, the top card is usually referred to as a creative custom white balancing tool, but there's actually three tools on that top card. The tippy top, there's a row of colored squares. Now these are included mostly for reference. They're very handy for, say, product photographers who have very specific colors contained in the product that need to be rendered accurately. This is going to give them a very good reference to look back at while they're photographing. Similarly, in the bottom, we have a set of squares that go from black to white. This is to give you a visual reference for where the information is in your file, which is to say shadow and highlight detail. This is sort of like an exposure warning, or the blinkies, if you will. Again, this is just a quick visual reference so you can see where in your file the information is. Now the middle squares are the actual creative custom white balancing tools. So the center tool is the actual creative white balancing tool. You can use this part of the tool in any program that allows you to set a custom white balance using a dropper tool. Now, the two squares that I've highlighted there in purple are neutral. So if you were to take that eyedropper tool and click on either of those two squares, they're also designated by a little dimple as being the neutral ones. Click on them with that eyedropper, it will neutralize your white balance every time. No matter what the white balance was set in camera, this will take you back to a neutral white balance. Now, you're going to be amazed at just how much time this little bit is going to save you in your workflow. There's going to be no more hunting and picking and looking for something to set a white balance off of in the scene. And I also think that the term white balance kind of brings more trouble than it does good, because it leads people to think that they have to set the white balance off of something white in the scene. And the flaw there is how seldom you're actually going to run into things that are pure white in the world. And so if you set your white balance off of something that isn't actually pure white, you're sort of stumbling a little bit out of the gate, and that little mistake is going to follow you through the rest of your workflow. So that's why carrying around a little bit of true neutral as a constant is so powerful. We then took that tool and kind of took it to the next logical step. On the top, we gave you a set of warming grays for portraiture work. So now, when you're working and you took that eyedropper and you neutralized the white balance using the square of the dimple, and for whatever reason your subject still looks a little bit pale, you can now grab that eyedropper again and move it along to one of our warming grays. So this will get you the desired effect of bringing some of the color back to the skin without ever having to go to the slider or a histogram and sort of vaguely move it around until it looks right. Also, this gives you the added benefit of being a constant that is repeatable. So now when you're working, you always know that clicking here gives you this effect. So just if you look on the left side, there's the portraiture of a person with a little sun behind it, and on the right side it's the same silhouette with a bigger sun behind it. And in between, there's pluses. Every step of the way there is going to warm you up further. Then, on the bottom row, we gave you a set of warming grays and cooling grays for landscape work. So in the bottom row, the middle square with the dimple is the neutral, and then you see a little silhouette of a mountain to one side with a sun. Those are the warming grays. And then you see the same silhouette of the mountain to the left with a snowflake, and those are cooling grays. Again, this is all about speeding up your workflow and making it a constant that is repeatable. Now, on to the bottom card, the most colorful card in the set. This is the actual color checker itself. So what this is a set of very specific colors arranged in a specific grid that the included software and Lightroom plugin is designed to see and use in its battery of tests. Now, the most important thing to know at this step is that white balancing is not color calibration. You can have your Kelvin perfectly dialed in your camera, and for whatever reason, it could still not be rendering colors correctly. You can take 3 brand new Nikon D800s off the line and test them all color-wise, and they're all going to be slightly different. Now take that and multiply it out through different camera models, through different manufacturers, through different age and different, let's say, gentleness of use. You're going to have a lot of variation color-wise. What we want to do is bring that all back to a standard, which is called ICC standards. You're going to hear that a lot when you're talking about color calibration. What ICC stands for is the International Color Consortium. And while that sounds a bit sinister, it's actually just a governing body that sets the standards for what color is in photography, not unlike how Pantone does for graphic design. So what the software is going to do with these colors is analyze your specific camera's sensor, your specific lens, to see how they react under different lighting conditions, and then use that information to make you what's called a DNG profile, which is a non-destructive file that you can then apply when converting your raw files that will bring the colors over to ICC standards. Now, I know that last bit is a bit to process all at once, so what I'm going to do right now is we're going to move into a few of our live demos, and I think by seeing that, it's all going to become clear exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to begin our demo today in Lightroom. The reason for that is the ColorChecker Passport actually comes with two softwares. One is a standalone software that can be used with whatever program accepts DNG profiles, and the other one is a specific Lightroom plugin. So the plugin is what I want to start with today. Here we are in Lightroom. Now, this is a photo that I clearly shot incorrectly. I did it purposely to show the power of the white balancing tool. So I took a photo in a tungsten environment with my camera set to daylight. Now, to compensate for that, we're in the Develop module, and I'm going to go over to the very top, which is our white balancing tool, and grab the dropper. Go over to one of our neutral squares. And just like that, you can see that I quickly compensated for the incorrect white balance and got rid of the color task that is associated with shooting a daylight white balance in a tungsten environment. Now, the next step. Remember, as I keep saying, white balancing is not calibrating. So, to calibrate in the colors correctly to the ICC standard, we're going to go up to File, Export with Preset, and choose the ColorChecker Passport. Now, this part is actually going to be up to you. You should name the profiles in a way that you'll remember when you have a large library of them to go through. So the organization, like I said, is personal preference. But I usually name it camera body, which was my D700, lens, which was 50 millimeters, and the lighting environment, which, like I said, was tungsten. Now, if I hit save right here, the profile would then go to work. Like I said, it's automatically designed to see the color checker in the scene and run the test. You'll basically get a little progress bar, and then Lightroom will restart. But even for a webinar on color management, that's a little bit boring for you folks at home to watch. So let's just pretend I hit save, and we'll move over to the next step. So, once Lightroom restarts and comes back, the profiles you created are going to show up under this heading, Camera Calibration. So you see here the profile is Adobe Standard, and that's actually what we just redid. Instead of using a standard profile, we are now going to use a profile specifically created for your camera in that lighting situation. So we'll drop that down, and there it is, D700 50mm tungsten. Now keep an eye on the colors in the pool balls. They shift. And they're now true to how they look in real life. I'll go back and forth a few times so you can see just how big a difference this makes. And again, didn't really take that much time at all. So, now I'd like to move on to a situation a little bit more complicated to really show off how powerful this tool is. Now, last summer, I shot my cousin's wedding with a friend of mine. And to begin the day, I was shooting the groom. And for the first shot, just like I keep saying, I had him hold up the ColorChecker Passport. Begin again, grab that dropper, and neutralize it. Now you can see nothing really changed there because the daylight white balance I was using on my Nikon was pretty accurate. But he looks a little bit pale, which is totally understandable for someone about to get married. So, let's warm him up a bit. we'll go about, now watch the skin tones, we'll go about 2 steps. And you can see a lot of warmth came back to his skin that easily. I did not have to start moving a slider around or anything like that. I've dialed him to where I want him. But again, I'll keep hammering this point home. White balancing is not color calibration. So we're going to go to File, Export with Preset, ColorChecker Passport. Name it again D700, 50mm lens, daylight. And again, here I would hit Save. The plugin would do its process, and Lightroom would restart. So over here, drop it down. Now, I got really lucky because not only did we have this great blue muscle car to shoot with on this day, my cousin-in-law was wearing bright red Rhode Island red pants. So, I'm going to change this. Now keep an eye on the car, the pants, and even the grass. It was a huge shift. Now, even though my white balance was perfect in camera for this, my Nikon could not render the $5,000 paint job on that muscle car, the Rhode Island red in the pants, and even the grass was losing a lot of the green. It looked a lot more dead than it was. So now what I do is I grab all the other photos from that session, same lens, same camera, same lighting situation, and hit sync. I want to sync the white balance, the process version, and the calibration. Done. So now this photo, which did not have the color checker in it, is properly color calibrated and properly white balanced. You can see again, back here the grass looked really dead. That wasn't the blue of the car. The whole thing. Do it one more time. Oh, excuse me. Just because I slipped under the wrong profile there, I'll do it. Now, I want to show you the added benefit of calibrating cameras to a standard. You can make multiple cameras match, whether you yourself shoot with multiple bodies on a job or you're working with another photographer. So, while I was shooting the groom side, my buddy was across town shooting the brides. And he shoots an entirely different system than I do. He shoots Canon, I shoot Nikon. Now, to begin, this isn't the best white balance, so I'm going to grab that dropper tool and neutralize it. We're already looking better. And then now, File, Export with Preset, ColorChecker Passport, and I'm going to make a profile for his camera without ever having to actually have the camera with me. So, it is a 5D Mark III. This was a 35mm lens, and it was indoor window light. Then again, I would hit Save. The profile would do its thing. Lightroom would restart, and I would get my profile. Now, viewers that are really paying attention here might notice that he actually shot the color checker upside down. So at this point, the plugin actually would fail because auto detection would not be able to see the colors. Now, don't worry, he freaked out a little bit too. You can simply rotate the image so the color checker is right side up and continue like you normally would. So, over here, just like before, Adobe Standard, got that profile. Now in this image, watch the floor. Shifts there too. So, he was off on yellows and magentas. My Nikon was off on blues and greens. But now, we're both calibrated into the same standard. Just like I did before, grab all the shots from his session, sync them, process version calibration, white balance, and we're good to go. And so now, when I delivered the proof to my cousin, she can't tell the difference, color-wise, between the two photographers. Alright, so just one last note about this image. Now, I happen to know that while shooting, the photographer was just using the window light to light the scene. But what would have happened if he was using a combination of window light and tungsten light, right? Two different illuminants that are two different colors. Tungsten is orange, and window light, depending on the time of the day, can be any shade of blue. Now, we have the ability, using this plugin, to create what's called a dual illuminant DNG. So again, if the photographer was shooting in a mixed condition, window light and tungsten, or say flash and fluorescent, what you would do was actually use two files to create the DNG. So, take one test shot with the ColorChecker Passport in the window light alone, and one test shot with the ColorChecker Passport in the tungsten light alone, and when you went to go make the profile, highlight them both, and then do File, Export, ColorChecker Passport, and the plugin will automatically make a dual illuminant DNG as long as it detects two illuminants with different colors in the files. Alright, so now let's take a look at how the workflow is different if you don't incorporate Lightroom. Say you use Photoshop solely. Now, let's open a RAW file. I'm going to use the pool ball image that you guys have already seen. So, just like before, first step, grab the dropper tool, neutralize the white balance. And so now, you're going to save the image as a DNG. So DNG, digital negative, is an open source RAW. And that is what we programmed our standalone software to work with. That way we keep up to date easier with all the different RAW files coming out of different cameras. And also we can support any camera that can be made from a RAW file to a DNG. So I'm going to save that on the desktop so it's easy for us to see. Click Done, and then exit Photoshop. So you can see, here's the DNG I just made. Next, we're going to open the standalone ColorChecker Passport software to make the DNG profile. So we just grab the DNG we made and drop it in. And the profiling software, just like the plugin I showed for Lightroom, is programmed to look for that color checker in the image, and there it is. Now, here is an interesting function that this software has that the profiling plugin in Lightroom doesn't allow you to do. If for whatever reason you don't photograph the color checker straight on, or you're having trouble making a profile, you can actually use this software to move the targeting around. Sort of like a transformation in Photoshop. So, ideally, you want to shoot the color checker head on, but for whatever reason that doesn't happen, you can actually use this software to adjust it and make the profile this way. But this one was head on, so we're good to go. We would just hit Create Profile, and it would add the profile to Photoshop automatically. Again, because I already made this profile using the Lightroom plugin, I don't want to confuse things. So just pretend that I hit Create Profile and we watched a little progress bar go. Also, just like we talked about in the plugin, this software has the ability to make dual illuminant DNG profiles. So you can see here, when you click on dual illuminant, there's two boxes down here. So you would drag and drop two separate DNGs with two separate illuminants in and create profile just the same way. And it'll, of course, be added to Photoshop, just like the other ones were. Now, reopen Photoshop. Open the RAW file again. And over here, little camera. Again, same as before, Adobe Standard. Drop down. And all those profiles we already made are there. And you can see the change is the same. So then we're ready to do whatever else we need to do and continue editing the file. I hope the video helped you learn a bit about camera calibration. And one thing I do know about color management, though, is there's always questions. So I have some questions in front of me that came in through the chat room and a few other places, and I'm just going to go over them for you right now. And if you have more, be sure to send them into the chat room. So we had a few questions about orientations. Let me grab the
color checker here. So as you can see, it's actually designed to stand. So how it stands on its own is pretty much the orientation you want it to be in, because the software, when it does its auto look, is looking for the colors to be in this specific pattern. So you want it to stand like this, and you can see it also does about a 45-degree angle, and that's for grabbing the light. So you want it to stand like that, and like I did mention in the video, if you have problems with orientation, you can use the standalone software to tweak it, or you can even rotate the files. We had a question about setting a custom white balance in camera. The card back here. And yes, you want this to fill the entire frame to make sure you get an accurate white balance. Let's see. What else do we have? If you have a ColorChecker Mini, which comes with our ColorMonkey photo device, you will only have this part. You won't have the upper custom white balance tool. If you have that and you're looking to set a custom white balance without these squares, you want to take your dropper and set it off the second square on the bottom roll there, right under the green. Let's see, what else? Should I always set the white balance before making the profile? Yes. To make sure you get an accurate profile, white balancing should be your first step. How close do you need to zoom in? So back to the orientation thing, to make your life easy when it comes to auto detect in both softwares, you want the color checker to be filling at least 20% of the frame. So it doesn't have to fill the whole frame, but at least 20 will have the software move the way you want it to. Let's see. Expiration. So the ColorChecker Passport does have an expiration date. We guarantee it for 2 years. That's because UV light exposure will eventually fade these colors, and if these colors shift, then the ability to make a profile is also going to shift. So it's something to keep track of when using your Passport. If you make a profile in the standalone, can you import it into Lightroom? Already done for you. Basically the standalone, when it puts them into the library it's going to pull from, it'll be in Photoshop and in Lightroom. If you go back and look at the video, when I do the drop down, you can actually see my entire library of profiles are there, and I've created those both in the standalone and in Lightroom. See if there's any more. Always the question, how often do I have to put the color checker into the shot? So we know that you can't always put it in every situation you want it to. I usually recommend just do it as much as you can. It is for every lighting situation, but the more you do it, the more you'll build up a library, and the more you'll have those to fall back on in case for whatever reason you forgot to take a test shot and you can't go any further. So every different lighting condition, you can take a test shot, and if you're shooting outdoors, say for a landscape situation, then you want to keep in track of time, because the color of the light is going to be changing as the sun moves across the sky. So there, if you're shooting for quite a while, try and take as many test shots as you can in a period. Let's see, just want to check to see if we have any more coming in through the chat room. And I believe we've actually covered all those. So, thank you very much for joining us today. And if you have any questions, be sure to head to blog.xritephoto.com and leave them for me there, and I'll get back to you. Thank you.